I would like to introduce you to Dr. Katie Woodley, who is my very dear ally and friend. Um, we have been in touch this year. We've kind of discovered each other in search for, I don't know, support and it feels good, right, to have actually
Yeah,
like-minded people in our lives. So Dr. Katie has been practicing veterinarian in North Colorado. Is it right?
correct. Yep. Northern Colorado.
And um, she has been, or you have been. It's funny to talk to you in the third person. So I'll just say you have been practicing and also helping dog lovers around the world to be empowered. And today we're going to talk about what you do and what dog lovers could do and cat lovers could do to keep their dogs healthy and how to navigate the confusing world of veterinary medicine, especially now, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's very different.
So it's a different world. I was just talking to someone, a client of mine today, and she started with me in the 90s, and she said it used to be such a different world that people were not as afraid to kind of venture out, and also our colleagues were much more daring to kind of explore alternatives and so on. We'll get there, but first, what I'd like to do is to ask you about your early days in your childhood, because I know there's always a story behind us becoming vets or whatever journey we take on. How was your childhood different than other kids?
It's probably similar to a lot of veterinarians. However, with when I was growing up, my mom's a huge animal lover, and the animals would always find our home, right? So I remember, you open the front door and here's this black kitty and with her three kittens on our doorstep, and we're always taking in animals. And I've always been raised around animals. And it's funny talking to my grandparents recently. They just turned like 90 years old, and we were just remembering all the memories and it was great. And they said, you always had an animal with you as a child, like always. And they pulled out a picture that I had drawn when I was like 5, and it was like, I'm going to be a veterinarian. And so it's funny because I don't always remember that. I remember going through high school and college and trying to figure out where I wanted to go. And I love science and I love medicine, and my mom's a nurse practitioner and my uncles are doctors, and, surrounded by the science. And I knew I wanted to go either into the human side or the vet side. And I volunteered and worked at I volunteered in a human hospital, actually in hospice, the hospice ward. And I love the connection with the people. Very sad, but it's amazing talking to people at the end of their life and hearing their stories. And, if I could go
Mhm.
back and do this, or just not having any regrets, and the love and the gratitude they have. And I love that part of it, that connection with people. But I was missing something. I knew, like, I didn't feel whole while I was there. And I always felt whole when I had animals around me. And so that's where I just went deep into the veterinary side and haven't looked back. And, it's just, I remember growing up also, we had remember this little bird that we had. Well, it was a wild bird, and it like got trapped under this wood pile, and like the wood fell on it, and it was not good. And we ended up saving it and like nurturing it back to health. And I just remember we named it Junior, and then we released Junior. So like, all these like random little memories of rescuing the
Mm.
animals and helping them,
Mhm.
and them finding our doorstep with my mom. And so, it's funny. I never remembered like, I want to be a veterinarian. Obviously there were little snippets along the way and my grandparents remembering that, but I've always had this really strong attraction to animals and just the beauty of them and the energy that they hold. And they've always resonated with my soul. And I feel that so much now. And I feel so blessed that I'm on this path.
You know, you speaking about animals and that he didn't feel whole without an animal. What would you tell people who actually do not have animals in their lives? Like, what are they missing? What are they missing out on?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I remember in college, one of my girlfriends, she never grew up with pets. And so she never felt attracted to have like an animal or a pet in her household. And it's funny, her partner, they ended up getting, he had a dog, and it was a husky too. So like a big dog. And she's like, now I get it. I understand like what you mean. And there's this really it's a little hard to, I've never put it into words. So that's an amazing question. But I find like there's this energy, there's this calming peace. And I've only been without a pet for 2 weeks after my Finn passed away from a brain tumor.
Mm,
Right,
mm,
right when, the whole pandemic started. And I lasted 2 weeks because the house was so quiet. And there's
mhm,
just this
mhm,
energy, and they're just, there's something different about an animal and how they're connected with their surroundings and the environment and yourself, and they bring peace, they bring calmness. And it's like you come home from a long day and there's this animal greeting you. And I love my husband dearly, but like Finn would greet me better than my husband would. I love you, Ryan. Don't get me wrong. But, I think any animal lover knows that and they feel that. And I think sometimes, like, if people haven't been raised around pets, they don't know what they're missing out on. And then they
mhm,
get a pet or they
mhm,
experience
mhm,
something like my friend in college. And it's like, oh, wow, there's something very different about having these dogs, these cats, other creatures. Like, it's not just dogs and cats. Like people talk about rats and birds, and there's something very powerful about their energy and the peace that I feel personally when I'm in the presence of
mhm,
those pets.
mhm. There's, in other words, there's an animal lover in everyone, I think, if they knew what they bring, right? Like, I actually love watching the transformations when, let's say, the husband doesn't want a dog, and then, the dog comes in the house, and the husband is completely taken apart by
Yes.
by the first little, wag of a tail. So it's really nice. So you talked about Finn, and I know that it may be hard to get back there, but we all have gone, most of us have gone through the losses. Um, what lessons has he taught you? What do you still remember he taught you?
Yeah, so Finn was that soul dog, right? And he was one of my first dogs on my own. Got him as a puppy, and he was with me through vet school. And my husband, he
Hmm.
was my partner at the time when I was in vet school. He was deployed a lot overseas he was in the Air Force over in New Zealand, and so he'd be gone for long periods of time. So Finn was my companion, the one that kind of like was there during the stress. And we brought him back to the States with us after vet school. And, it's, he's a German Shepherd, and, their personalities are kind of crazy and goofy and high energy. And, I think when, a lot of times we take things for granted. And so I look at like, through my early part of my career, I worked really long hours, and you just like take for granted
Hmm.
that they're always going to be there. And there's
Hmm.
going to be
Hmm.
another weekend where you can go to the river and play with them or take them to the beach when
Hmm.
we lived in New
Hmm.
Zealand. And it's like, oh, there'll be another time, right? And I think with Finn, one of the blessings, and this sounds really weird, is that so he started having seizures, and that's how we diagnosed the brain tumor. And when we
Hmm.
did the CT
Hmm.
scan and found the tumor, and one of the things is that it really taught me to take time out and be present.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I didn't know how much time I had with Finn. He did really poorly with conventional medications, and I was very
Hmm.
grateful to be able to have the holistic side, because we ended up gaining a year of really good quality life with him when we were looking at like a week after his
Hmm.
diagnosis, because he was doing so
Hmm.
poorly. And I just remember every single day being like, this is Finn time, like taking time out, sitting in the grass with him, being present. He loved laying in the grass, and you know how they are, they're just present. And taking him to the mountains, he loved the water, and taking him to the lake that he loves swimming in, and taking all the pictures. I have so many pictures. And it's one of those things where it taught me now with my two cats that I'll probably run by and do something crazy during this, like be present with them. You don't know how much time we have. And it also really taught me that for people, like, especially right now, right? We don't know how much time we have. We don't know what the end will be like. We don't know if we're going to see our friends. We don't know if we're going to see our parents again, if you still have parents. And he really taught me just to be present, to be grateful for what time we do have, and make the most of each moment. And the other thing he taught me too, and this is something where he lives on, and like the mission of my business is like, just don't stop. Like if you hear like there's nothing more you can do, keep asking those questions. And that's something that, stumbling upon holistic medicine in my, like, as a veterinarian, it's because we didn't stop at just hearing no for my husband developing an autoimmune disease. And I'm so grateful that I didn't just say, well, Finn, that's it. Like all we have is conventional medicine. The specialist said this is it. And I look at that every day and I hear that. And I know, Peter, you hear that with your clients. Like I walked out with no hope. And Finn gave me hope. Finn gave me hope that there's always something else or something you can try. It may not work, but it's worth pursuing. And, so he lives on every single day with that. And he's just really taught me to like ground myself, be present, because you don't know what's going to happen. And,
So he's
but
still part of the practice in a way. Like
he is,
he's by
he's
your
right here.
side in many ways. Yeah. My brother died of a brain tumor, and my brother-in-law died of a brain tumor. So brain tumors are, they're obviously, I have experience with them, and they're very challenging and tricky. But as you said, it's I think that sometimes, and I don't really know whether it's just about brain tumors. I think any disease, but brain tumors, because they affect the mind and the brain, they may kind of they may allow us to access the deep emotions a little more, like seeing the people actually going through the changes and so on. And as he said, actually, they definitely, and this applies to my brother and my brother-in-law. It actually, on some level, brought me closer to them, and I'm sure that he probably feel the same way about Finn. And the result of that is that we really actually are more willing to stop and do nothing and be with those we love. So that's really beautiful. Anyway, I know that you love to understand the science of things, but you also obviously are holistic and practice Chinese medicine and herbal medicine and many other techniques. What surprised you about medical science the most? What was the biggest surprise? Like, let's say you went to vet school and you had certain ideas about what you're going to do and how it's going to be, and then you graduate, and then what surprised you? What was the biggest surprise?
I think I wasn't really expecting to not find all the answers. Like there's that, you're telling patients, like especially like allergies and cancer and pain and these chronic illnesses, you get to a point and there's nothing more you can really do with conventional medicine. And medicine's advancing, but you're at this place, and it's this awful place, right? Where you want to help more and you're frustrated that you can't do more, and you keep searching for more answers, but there's nothing there. And so that your client, your patient is stuck and you feel stuck. And I feel like that was a big kind of awakening, like, oh, I thought I'd have the answers for like using medicine, and like we've come so far with all the medical advances, and that was really frustrating. The other thing that was really frustrating and like a big surprise was, especially now in this space, and really, really being proactive and kind of speaking out and teaching and educating, is how close-minded people are to learning more. And I know I'm opening up a can of worms, but like, I think it's just, there's this other world of medicine that can't always be explained right by what we talk about science, but it works. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it works. We see it every day.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I use in my practice. Like, that's why I went this route, because it was so much better to give people options and tools and things like that that work when you're stuck, when you're treating symptoms, and you shift your approach and you look at what is the root problem and why did something go wrong, and we ask better questions. And so I think that was, I didn't realize it at the time when I was going through it. I just felt the frustration, and then I started seeking other answers, and that's when I stumbled upon like this entire realm of holistic medicine and being able to integrate it into your conventional or your Western medicine.
So how, you talked about the closed-mindedness, or why do you think that is? Like, they're, it's complex, right? Like, some people may be lured or not lured, but they may be attracted to holistic medicine, but for whatever reason they don't go there, and then others may be just not open to it at all. What do you think underlies that? There is an underlying reason, my sense is, and I just wanted to know what you think about that.
I think it makes people uncomfortable, because you can't always, like, we hear one thing, right? We're taught one thing. And I think a lot of people, because in my own family, there's my sister-in-law is a neurosurgeon and not holistic at all. Love her dearly. She does amazing jobs.
Yes.
And it's interesting, you can't have a conversation about nutrition. And so it's, and I think there's what's happened too, I think, with medicine, and a lot of times if you are talking to a practitioner that's specialized, there's this disconnect from the body and the
it's connection. A tunnel vision.
Yes, we focus on, like, I do the heart. That's all I know. And there's no connection to how does the heart affect the brain? How does the heart, like, how's the microbiome affecting the heart? And
how do the emotions affect the heart?
Exactly.
How do the missing nutrients affect the heart?
Yes.
All that.
Yes.
Right?
And the thing is that it's not taught, that connection. And so you focus on how the heart works, you focus on the physiology, you focus on the drugs that affect the heart, and that's it. And I think it makes people uncomfortable in engaging in those conversations on, this is a body that's in an environment, that's in an ecosystem, that's being affected by other things. And it's just not taught. Like, we weren't taught it, or I wasn't taught it in vet school, all the different connections and how everything interacts. So I feel like there's some of that. I also think it's the different way of thinking. I think it does come back to making people uncomfortable, and you don't like being different, right? Most people don't like being different. Right? That's hard.
Exactly. Because being different means that you're outside of the core group. I know that going to a conference, right, everyone likes to talk about the same things the same way, and it's scary. I think that you just hit it right on, that people are afraid to be ousted from that core group, right? And that's actually the greatest form of punishment for humans, to actually be marginalized and outside, right? And that may be one of the reasons why these times are so difficult, because as soon as people have a different opinion, they are marginalized quite often. So it's when you kind of look at the core reasons for why it's happening, it really may be about us being afraid to be alone, being ousted, not being part of the group. And in vet school, right? They teach us that if we don't know, that's a big problem. Like we fail. So I think that in vet school, I'm not sure how you feel about that. In vet schools, they don't really teach us not knowing. They don't being comfortable with not knowing, right? And but looking for the answers. And so it's complicated. Um, how if you give our viewers and listeners an advice how to find a good vet, how would they recognize a good vet? How would you look? Let's say that you're not a veterinarian for a moment, but you have the knowledge of the industry and the field. How would you look? What would you do to look for the right veterinarian?
I think with where I'm at, so let's say, like you mentioned, I'm not a vet, but I do holistic medicine for myself. I eat healthy and I want the same for my pet. I think the first starting place I would go is I guess this is like the insider thing. I'd go to looking for those veterinarians that share similar principles, right? Like they practice both conventional and they're integrative. They conventional and your Eastern, they're open, they're integrative. They do both. So that way you can get all the care at one practice. Cause I think that's really helpful. Being able to not have to jump around, but sometimes you need a team. Like I'm part of teams. So I'd probably go to, I know about the American Holistic Vet Association and search for a vet, right? Now we know that everyone that's listed there may not fit that criteria. So what I would do then is I would research their website and I would look for the different things that they do on that website. Are they selling your big brand pet foods already on that site? I'd be looking for that because I know myself, I want fresh food diets. I'd be looking at what are their certifications? What are additional trainings that they've taken upon themselves to learn a different way or continue to grow? I think that's very, very, very important. So we're not stagnant. I would call the practice and ask the staff a couple questions.
Cool.
I'd ask them,
Very good.
how do you view vaccine titers? I would ask them that. And if they have no idea what that is, that's a bad sign. So that is a key question. They don't know, they're not running
right.
them. And if they laugh at you, just hang up the phone. So, but asking, about vaccine titers, asking about what does it look like when I come to your practice? Like, what is the flow of the day? The receptionist should be able to answer those types of questions. Do all your doctors talk about cases? Do they work together? Do they have similar viewpoints? Even if some of them aren't holistic and you want holistic, are they still open to it? I've worked in practices where I was the holistic vet and other vets weren't. So I think that's an important question. I think just digging a little bit deeper and getting on the phone and talking to them can make a huge difference. And also if you have people that are open to answering those questions and they're not judgmental on a phone and they make you feel comfortable, that's huge. I think that's the first step. And then going in and seeing how you feel with your pet and how they treat you. And do they listen to your questions? Do they take time to answer your questions on your first visit with your pet? Is really, really important because, I feel like people aren't being heard.
Are they listening or are they talking about themselves and interested in what they're saying, right? It's a really cool one. Important one. Not that wouldn't be cool, but it's a good question to ask. So what is your favorite topic in medicine? Maybe the discipline and then maybe a problem, because we all have our favorite things to deal with because we know how to crack them, right? We know how to address them, and suddenly from something very difficult it becomes easy and simple. Tell me more.
I love nutrition. I love nutrition because it's the foundation for everything, and it's been an amazing journey because it's going from learning about just prescription foods and kibble diets and really realizing there's so much more that's going on underneath that. And what I love about it is that we can tweak the diet for everything and we see results. But one of the things that I really like treating that I feel like is very rewarding is kidney disease. And
Nice.
it's one of those things where you're told like you can't reverse it, you can't change it. Here's your prescription food and like good luck. Come back when they're sick and then we put them down and or we start doing fluids. But there's there's not a lot of things that you can do from a conventional perspective to help slow that down. And I find what's really neat is that and it goes a little bit against the conventional way we're taught, right? Where, we're supposed to put them on low protein diets, well, supposedly, but we put them on fresh food or even raw food diets. And we see the kidney values reverse and go back to normal or go from stage 2 to stage 1 and all with just a diet change to a fresh food diet if they weren't on it. And I love that. And that's rewarding and it's not super expensive. It's not hard, necessarily too hard to do. And pet parents can see that and they can watch their pets feel really good. And then we can add in, of course, I add in herbs and supplements and nutraceuticals and things like that and adjust the types of food based on food therapy principles. But just that overall nutrition and how we can really tweak and adjust that to optimize overall health and the immune system. And it's just so like healing skin disease and like I just love nutrition and just the power of food.
Can you give me some specifics about how you would address kidney disease? I know that people will be asking, so what do you do about kidney disease? And,
Yeah. Yeah. So typically what I do is I don't use prescription diets. It's the first thing. Like if you're on a prescription diet, depending on where your pet's at, unless they're end stage kidney disease, of course, and we're stage 4, but most pets that I'm seeing are stage 1, stage 2. They're just diagnosed. No one like had any idea there was a problem. And so what I tend to do is I'll either go to a fresh food diet or a raw food. So when I say fresh food, that can include raw, but or like a lightly cooked. And so looking at, I am careful of things like the phosphorus content, but I think for pets, a lot of times, even just like if you put them onto a balanced homemade diet or a pre-made diet, you're going to see those values probably actually, especially stage 1, normalize. So one of the resources that pet parents can use to formulate balanced diets is, for one, your website. Like, let's be real. You can go to your website and use that resource. So, and then there's also like balanceit.com that you can create balanced recipes. So I'm looking at using, I look at the pets also. Does your pet tend to run hot? Does it tend to run cold? This is for dogs and cats. If you have a pet that overheats easily, then I'm looking at using cooling proteins. So turkey, rabbit, duck. If your pet is cold, like a kitty cat, like an older cat, and they're kind of that like older creaky cat and they're sitting on the heater vent, then we want to use warming proteins. So those are things where we're using like chicken, we can use lamb, but also this is where like organ meats are really good too to start integrating in. So using things like the kidney and feet, like feeds like. So I love using that. And then I'm looking at, we need omega-3 essential fatty acids. So help reduce inflammation, support kidney health. I love adding in supplements that contain like CoQ10. So that's an antioxidant that decreases as your pet ages. It supports kidney health. It supports heart health. It's really good for your senior pets. So utilizing some of those nutraceuticals and supplements to help them and just support the organ systems that are a little bit deficient, especially those kidneys. So those are like very brief, like basic, some basic stuff.
I really apologize. My phone has been ringing because I forgot. I thought I turned it off, and I didn't.
That's okay.
That's life.
That is life.
I like the idea of. I definitely agree with you about kidney disease because I actually, and you probably will see it similarly. I think that the kibble is actually one of the causes of kidney disease because it dehydrates the animals.
Oh, yeah.
Puts higher demands on the kidneys, plus nutritionally it's inferior. And when it comes to the low protein diets, in the early days when I came to Canada, I thought that kidney disease equaled really starved, like thin animals. And then I started feeding fresh food to the animals with kidney disease, and they didn't lose weight. So basically, the so-called prescription diet, I don't think there was anything prescription in them, I actually starved the animals of protein completely, and they look like bone racks. And it has nothing to do with kidney disease, but
Yeah.
basically we starved them to death virtually on these diets. And I only wish, and it would be so cool to have a conversation, a round table with the people who actually formulated these diets and say, so really, like,
Yeah.
have you
What were
actually
you
done any
thinking?
of these trials?
Yeah.
Because it's so mind blowing. So we're gonna switch the gears a little bit, and there are always people that have big influence in our life, and I'll let you choose. You can give us one or two or three people who had the biggest influence on you in life, and why.
Doesn't have to be vet related or
I think that it doesn't, because I
okay.
think that, well, as we know, everything is related with everything anyway. So,
True. Yeah. So the person that actually had the biggest influence on me, that actually helped guide me into the path I'm currently on. It's a man named Brendan Burchard, and he's actually a like a personal development coach. And it's ironic. A couple years ago, I didn't want to be a vet anymore. I was burned out. I was tired of it. And I was like, what am I doing this for? And
mm,
it was frustrating, right? And my husband, my dear husband, got me this book. I love reading. I would read all day if I had all the time in the world. I would just read. I love reading. And he got me a book for my birthday. So literally it's probably been 5 years now, 5, 6
uh-huh.
years. And because I just had my birthday yesterday. And so
Oh, happy birthday. Oh my goodness.
thanks.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So literally like 5 years ago,
Oh,
gave me this
wow.
book. And, it was like the 5 Habits of Success. And I was like, okay, I'll just read that. And it just really, it, it just tweaked something in my brain. And
Mhm.
I
Mm.
ended up doing their coaching program. And I remember getting on that call with a coach every single week. And I was like, I got to change something. Something's got to change. And I talk about like leaving the clinic, and I talk about like starting my own business. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I ended up,
A human moment, basically.
yes, a human moment, right? We all have it.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
has that,
yeah.
right? And a lot of times we ignore it and we shut it down and we stay stuck, right? And I did the complete opposite, and I quit and I started my own business. And I ended up joining Brendan Burchard's mastermind and having faith that I was putting myself amongst other people that were doing the same thing and wanting more and wanting like this, like a life that you are just like every moment is just beautiful. You see the
Mhm,
gratitude that you
mhm.
see, like, and it changed everything. And so I am
Nice,
so grateful for that book and
nice.
finding that personal growth path, because it changed my life and it changed who I am. And it's something like the
Nice.
quotes I share on social media a lot of times are from Brendan Burchard, and so many people have no idea who he is. And I highly recommend, especially if you're feeling like lost and stuck, which so many people are, because it changed my life and it allows me to regain perspective after a long day too, and just sit. I do his journal every single morning. He's part of my morning routine. And I honestly, that would be, he's been the biggest influence in my life and this part of my life.
It's so funny. I think books are actually another connecting point in our lives. Um, I've had a few books that actually made big difference in my life. In 2007, I was burning out too. I was burned out, and I needed to change my path. And I was thinking about the same thing: should I be in medicine or not? But then eventually, we love it, right? Like we
Yeah,
just
I
we just
know.
don't like the format sometimes. And the book that I run into was called Radical Forgiveness, and it was about that things are basically happening in life for a reason, and that we should actually listen to the messages that we get, right?
Mm.
So yeah, it's cool. How do you spell the author's name? So for everyone else as well.
Yeah. So Brendan,
And I'll type it.
Okay, Brendan, and then Burchard, Burchard.
Okay. Cool. Very good. I've got it. So, was there an aha moment in your life? Was this the aha moment where with the book, or were there any other aha moments when it when it comes to anything? People often expect that veterinarians will talk only about medicine and healing and health, right? But I think that unless we kind of grow on a personal level, we cannot become good healers or the best healers we can be. Aha moments are important.
Yes, they are. And my aha moment, one of the big ones, and it, changed the trajectory of our lives, was when my husband developed an autoimmune disease. And that was like that's related to health, but that was the day everything changed. And, I'll never forget sitting in that room with him and hearing that diagnosis. And we talk about how he felt, but I can only imagine based on how I felt, how he felt. And I think that was the moment that you realize that there has to be something more. And that's where I love reading and I love learning about the body and the human side and all of that. But it's also one of those things where this goes back to like the personal development and personal growth and like your mental space. If we don't clean out the garbage, essentially, right? From all the past, all the traumas, all the things that have happened, we can never achieve optimal health. And that's the hard part. And that's something that every day, like coming up against that, and with my husband and his journey and being a big part of that, is looking back at, okay, why wouldn't your body heal? Like what else is trapped? And like there's something more. And it doesn't mean that you have no other options. It's just that you need to tweak. And I think that's learning that and recognizing it and accepting it and being okay, like that it's not always straightforward. It's going to be up and down. Was a really big moment because I like control. I'm not going to lie. I like being in control of things. Like it makes life easier, right? When we feel in control. But sometimes we're
I
not,
understand.
a
We
lot of
all
times we're
like
not.
that, right? We like to understand why things are happening. Clients come in and say, so what's going on? Can you fix it? Right?
You're
And
like, I'm not
sometimes it's not that
sure.
easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes we have to say, we don't know. I don't know, but we'll try. And I like the idea when there is a big obstacle and it seems like, you've had some obstacles that you had to overcome, whether it was on your own or with your husband. It can be dissected to smaller pieces and then just kind of take the one little part. And I think that this is something that we learn in veterinary medicine, that something that is, most cases are kind of overwhelming, right? These days, like they're complex, there's a lot of medication, a lot of problems going on, and the body at certain points starts kind of falling apart. And I always say that when it becomes overwhelming, we just go step by step, like dissect it to shorter pieces. Let's say go by day, by hour, or by day, or by week, as opposed to looking ahead what's going to happen in a year. And that makes it a little handleable, more handleable, if it's an English word.
Yes.
So Katie, you've been a real connector. I know that you've been interviewing veterinarians. I was one of the victims some time ago.
Victims? Was it that painful?
I thought I would throw it in just for the fun of it. But what do you get out of connecting people, and why do you think it's important? And beside doing your veterinary work, obviously you've been doing that. You've been a connector. So what do you get out of that?
I love hearing people's stories. We all bring something different to the table and experiences, and we're all so different, and I love that. And I think that's really important. And I think now more than ever, people are feeling alone, and they're also isolating, and especially for a lot of people that are similar in terms of wanting like what we have and thinking along our realms. It's almost easier to quiet yourself and go alone, right? And there's a lot of depression and sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think right now more than ever, being able to, this is something it's not always easy, and you can understand and relate, being able to bring people together and help them heal. Like, it's not always about talking about like medicine and our pets and their health. It's like, how are you doing? Like, do
Mm-hmm.
you feel heard?
Mm-hmm.
Like, their families may not hear them, or they may not want to hear them, but I want people to know like that there's people like us where you're welcome, and it's okay to think
Mm-hmm.
differently. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I like, hearing both sides, even if it makes me uncomfortable, because
Mm-hmm.
it also helps me acknowledge and listen. And so being able to connect people, I think, is so powerful. And I think a lot of times it's just, especially right now, it's so much easier to disengage if someone thinks differently, and to not
Mm-hmm.
get that uncomfortable feeling or feel that like tension rise, right? But I think it's so important more than ever that we actually connect more and just ask questions and clarify and keep an open mind as much as possible. And it's not about changing their mind, it's about listening and hearing. And that's where I really hope that, like, what I can personally do, I'm very like, I don't have a huge impact, but if I can make a little bit of an impact and allow someone else to be heard or feel comforted and not feel alone, like, that's huge,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
but but yeah, I think
That's
bringing people,
beautiful.
yeah. And if it's social media, it's a little harder on social media nowadays to bring people together, but it's, I think, having a safe space to just be heard and not be judged, and
Mm-hmm.
listen to what people are going through, whether it's on one side or the other, and whether it agrees with you or not. Like, I don't think that matters. Like, I really like, just have the conversation.
I have a feeling a lot of people will be calling you after this interview, after they see this, because it is rare for a person to be so willing to actually be and be so supportive and understand the connections of the animal health and human health and our mental and emotional state and all that. How how do you deal with those people who are either not open to holistic medicine or opposed to you? What is your advice as well about that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I've actually been going through that this week with social media posts, um, and people reaching out and email. Like, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, like, happens on the back end. And the biggest
Hmm.
thing that I always try to do is to just ask further questions. And I find a lot of times, like,
Hmm.
people don't want to engage, but if I can take a stance where at least I can gain more clarity on why, like,
Hmm.
what's your viewpoint? Like, what about this, right? There's always two
Hmm.
views to each side. And, I never want to be, and it's hard sometimes, I never want to be stuck in a view just because it feels comfortable. I want to know why do you feel that way? Love seeing
Hmm.
like your viewpoints, research, whatever it is, but also here's why I think this way too. Have you
Hmm.
looked at that? What are your thoughts?
Hmm.
And if they engage appropriately, then let's have a conversation. I think for people, where what happens a lot of times, and this is why there's a lot of fear about having a conversation or posting something that is controversial, right? Talking about like health right now, and looking at, why aren't we having a discussion on what are the root causes? Why aren't we talking about immune health?
Hmm.
Why aren't we,
Hmm.
helping to heal, right? Give you the tools to optimize your health, to protect you, right? I think so many people are afraid to post that because you do get an onslaught of people. And I think what happens is people start doing personal attacks. For that type of situation, because it happens all the time to me, is you can ask them why they think that. And if they continue to personally attack you and they're not addressing the topic, I move on. You can't engage with that.
I have a feeling that people actually, those who react really strongly, it's just another form of fear, right? Because if people are or they fear that they've done either something wrong, or they fear for their safety or for their health, and the decisions that they're making are really, like, some of them are irreversible, so they actually have to feel comfortable, and they don't want anyone to suggest that they made a mistake, right? And I understand that, but we've had over the years, we've had a few people in our community, and they were not easy, and sometimes they were right down abusive, and my team would sometimes come to me and say, we have to fire this person, this is not right. And I say, why don't we just take this person as a little bit of a project, and see what they're really worried about, and see whether anyone ever listened to them and understood their fears and worries. And some of these people, and this is, I consider that one of our biggest achievements, some of these people just turn around so beautifully when actually they feel safe and when they feel understood, and for their opinions, even though they may have a very different opinion from ours, right? And then suddenly they're a little bit more open to changing their views and maybe their animals' plan or health plan, or the way they approach things. So it's really interesting. Even anger is actually on social media is fear. So when we kind of take it that way, right, it's a little easier. But yeah, I don't really know whether I get really upset about things online anymore. I just think that there's a point of numbing.
Well, you grow a thicker skin too, right? As you go through it, and you do a lot of social media and a lot of talks, and you also present different views. And I think there's going to always be someone that doesn't like that view, right? And it's for depending on various reasons, and whether it is because they are fearful or they did do something that they can't reverse, right? Something's in your body, you can't get it out. And there's that. And I agree 100%. It goes back to our survival mechanism, right? What are the things that we need most, like the love, the survival instincts, the fear of being alone, being abandoned? Do we have food and water, right? The basic survival needs that we have. And no, I love like how you said, like looking at them and really shifting focus and trying to figure out why. I think that takes a step further, taking people off of the social media platform into a more private space, because it just escalates. And that's a big problem with, I think, the way you have people then jumping in, and it's just like, it's like a snowball effect, and it just turns into a storm. And I think
and there's the ban button.
Yes, I've used a few of those. I've used that a few times.
Some of it may not be even people, right? Or it can be some sort of troll who actually, who has been hired by some sort of entity to actually disturb. And division is a dangerous paradigm. I know that we don't want to talk about this topic much, but still, I think that it helps. Well, at least I'm always conflicted talking about loss and how to deal with losing. But is there any suggestion or recommendation you would have for people when they see that their animal is reaching the end of their life? And, we all will get there and have been there. What do you suggest? What is your way of dealing with it, or what do you tell your clients when things get rough and difficult?
You know, the I think the hardest part for us, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Being able to be able to make that decision on when your pet's life can end. And we can help them pass, peacefully, hopefully with, the help of a veterinarian. Um, if, they're not going to necessarily, if like it drags on. And I think one of the things that I give for my clients is, having a good day jar and a bad day jar, and getting cotton balls and being able to objectively place a ball into that jar each day.
Uh,
And it
uh,
removes that like feeling, because this always happens or it happens to a lot of people at the end. You've made the decision, you've come to terms with it, and you're like, today is the
mm,
day. And then
mm.
what is your pet like? They're like eating again, and they're like excited. They
Yes,
got like this burst of
yes.
energy, and you're like, I'm making the wrong decision. Why would I put them
Mm-hmm,
down? And I
mm-hmm,
think having, like, if your bad day jar is full compared to your good day jar, you can look at that and go, I get to be with them on like the day they're feeling good and when they're going to go to sleep, and I get to hold them and I get to be with them,
mm-hmm,
and their last memory
mm-hmm,
is with me. And so I
mm-hmm,
think that helps people with that emotional side. I
mm-hmm,
did I have a YouTube video. I actually filmed it a week after Finn passed, and it's about grief, and it's about the resources and the tools to help you, because that feeling, and I
mm-hmm,
very
mm-hmm,
emotional in it, I'm not going to lie. It was a
mm-hmm,
week after Finn
mm-hmm,
passed, but
mm-hmm,
I had so many other clients going through it, and friends that lost pets. And I've done like talks with a nonprofit about cancer and the end of life. And I was like, people need these resources, because sometimes your pet is the only thing you feel like you have in your life, and then they're gone and there's
mm-hmm,
nothing else. And
mm-hmm,
having those
mm-hmm,
resources is key. So people
mm-hmm,
can go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor, and it's one of the top videos. It's a grief video. It's like a workshop. So there's resources
mm-hmm,
there to guide people. And there's some
mm-hmm,
poems. I might cry a lot, so just FYI.
mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where I think if we can look at our pets, and I think once again, take the time to sit and be with them and remember all the good things. And the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing also is allow yourself the grace to feel the grief, however it feels right. If that means like yelling and
Yes,
screaming, yell and
yes,
scream.
yes, yes.
Everyone, if you cry for a year, that's okay. Like there is no right or wrong way to process grief in terms of like with our pets, and each person will be different, each pet will be different. And so I think that's really important to honor that. And if someone says, like, why are you still crying over your dog? It was just a dog. They don't understand. And
Yes,
most
yes.
pet parents will understand that our pets make a huge impact. And when they pass, it's it's one of the hardest things we experience in life.
I know, I know. I totally agree with you. I like that you encourage people to express the emotions. I am a big believer in the fact that when you hold emotions back, that actually become stronger, but they also become more damaging and harmful. When I lost Sky, our first dog, he kind of helped me through the difficult times of building the practice and then leaving the practice and building the online presence and all that. When I learned that I was in Norway, checking out the manufacturing of one of our Omega products, and I got the call that I had to come back. And I I do the best expressing emotions when I write. And so I basically sat on the flight and I wrote a letter to him and I cried the whole time. And obviously the letter is still out there, but it was when I arrived here, I knew that the only thing that I can do for him is to let him go and let him go without really taking him through more suffering and through more procedures. And I could do all that, right? But sometimes letting go is the biggest gift that we can give to our loved ones. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But on a good note, let's switch the gears again. Um, Do you have any funny stories from your practice?
Oh, geez. Oh,
I'll tell you one if you
oh
tell me
no.
one.
So one of my good friends who I used to work, she was a veterinary technician that I worked with at one of my first jobs back in Colorado Springs when I first moved back from New Zealand. And I remember first appointment of the day, and this is before like all my integrative days, and I had a cat that needed anal glands expressed. And, I think I was probably like 2 years out. I'm still like fresh out. Now I know not to stand behind it, right? So I'm squeezing. It went all over my face, all over
Yeah.
my hair, and it was just like everywhere. And I smelled like anal glands all day long, and I will never forget it. And I remember too, because I thought I cleaned it off, and it was
Oh, yeah,
snowing
yeah,
that
yeah.
day. And I remember that because it made my hair all wet when I was like wiping off the snow
Yeah.
off my car to go home, and it made it smell again. And I was just like, okay, anal glands, like never live that one down.
I must say that I've been traumatized by anal gland kind of expression as well, because we used to have when I was growing up, we had a little dachshund, and she loved going to the cottage. We had a little cottage in the mountains, and whenever we got in the car and we got on the road and she recognized we were going to the cottage, she got really excited and she squeezed her anal glands.
Oh
Right?
no.
So nobody wanted to have her on their lap. But it was just really, and
Oh.
I also, as a European, I'm a little more, I don't know, like a little free. Like body is a body. But I actually had a couple of clients kind of mistaking body parts, right? So the
Oh
very
no.
common one is that when dogs get neutered, and then they come to the practice and they're happy to see someone, right? They get a little hard on, and clients often ask, like, oh my god, like the vet forgot to neuter him, like there's something wrong. Or
Yeah.
they come, right, and say, I think that
So
they
on
did the
that note,
surgery wrong.
oh my gosh. So I will never go back to this. But the last practice before I started my own business, we did reproduction also. So we did artificial insemination, we collected semen, like
Yeah,
we did
yeah, that
C-sections.
was part of the
And
deal, I know.
yeah. And so I will never forget this little Shih Tzu. And he, oh God. So I'm collecting semen, right? That's how we collect semen. And he was literally nibbling on my ear and I was just like, I can't.
Oh my
And I was
goodness.
just like, the owner was like, he really likes you. I was like, this is great. So
Dogs are free, and this is,
yeah.
we never kind of intended this to be 18 and over podcast, but obviously it has become. I remember another client. It was very funny. She she was, I'm just going to say she was, or she is, her husband is a doctor, and and she's well educated and so on. But one day she actually adopted a new female dog, and she pointed to her private parts and she goes, "What is that? Is that a belly button?"
Oh no.
So
Well,
I
it's
had to
like
actually give her a
nipples,
little
right? People
education.
trying
Yeah,
to
I
pull
know.
nipples off for ticks,
Yeah,
and like you're like,
yeah,
no, it's a
yeah.
nipple. Stop pulling it off. Like,
So I think that everyone who gets a dog will have to kind of take the anatomy book out and say, okay, this is it, and that's what it is, and so on. But anyway, I think that we should end on a funny note, right? So thank you
yeah.
so much for coming.
Oh, this is
And
great.
is there anything else? Where can people find you? That's actually one thing that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so people can find me at thenaturalpetdoctor.com. I also have social media on Facebook and Instagram, and then of course my YouTube channel, Dr. Katie Woodley, the Natural Pet Doctor. So a lot of content there for people to dive into.
I am sure there is. And thank you so much for being here. I hope this is not the last time.
Yes, thanks so much for
And
having me.
putting up with me.
Putting up with me. I hope it wasn't torture.
Not at all. A pleasure. I was really enjoying seeing you, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Peter. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.